Hey everyone. Um, as you can see, we are not standing in our lecture room at the observatory for this presentation. We unfortunately had some technical difficulties with the saving of the presentation when we got done with this. So um, I just decided that I would, because I could, just go ahead and re-record this at home and give it my best shot. Unfortunately, it's not going to include some of the fun banter, including heckling from my co-author, my wife, Amy Brock-Hon. I'm Kevin Hon. Uh, but it um, felt like it was a worthwhile thing to go ahead and redo this because there were lots of members that were not, that can't make meetings and make even the virtually, sitting at home. Uh, so I'm going to give it a shot here. So it might be an abbreviated version because I don't have the interaction with all the members and stuff. It was a fun little time that day, but I'm going to give it my best shot here. The advantage with this one is that if I'm doing this and I forget something or mess up, I can edit it a little bit. So we'll see if I have to do that or not. So anyways, I hope you enjoy it. So I'm calling this road trip number 2 and part 1 for a couple reasons. Amy and I went on a trip last year. We went up to Yerkes and Adler Planetarium. And so when we got back, we gave a little bit of presentation on that. So Yerkes Observatory, and got to see the 40-inch refractor that Bernard ended his career, having access to and up there in Yerkes and stuff, and it was awesome. So this is kind of road trip 2. So, and basically it is the recent adventure of our historic telescope mirrors out of the Clarence T. Jones Observatory. So, a little bit of background. I want to thank Ralph McConnell for supplying these pictures. We've mentioned this a few times, even shown a couple of these pictures at meetings and so forth. For those that unfortunately, haven't made it or so forth, or fortunately now, you can kind of get a little bit of a background here. So, very historic telescope built in 1937, or finished in 1937. Has gone through a little bit of reworking and some modifications over the years. Very minimal. Several times the mirrors have been removed and re-aluminized, but for the most part, it hasn't been touched in about 50 years. So these pictures here that we have, this is the orange that we're all used to now. This is the original color of the telescope. And in 1973, they decided to get the mirrors recoated, re-aluminized. In general, every 10 or so years probably would be just fine. Some of the major observatories around the country that are still doing scientific research and so forth, some of them will do it every other year or every 5 years or so. But this one, it got done in 1973. They also decided to paint the telescope, and I'll get into the orange in just a little bit. It is not UT orange, believe it or not. But this was, to our knowledge, this is the last time that this telescope has gone through such a renovation, and even having a recoating of an aluminizing of the mirrors that we're aware of. So 1973, that's 52 years ago. So here's one of our newsletters. So again, we're trying to, for those that are unaware, we are building our archive for both the Bernard Astronomical Society and for the Clarence T. Jones Observatory. And this is from the March of 1973 newsletter. And this is kind of what's interesting about this. It's great that we have some documentation on it. So Bobby Thompson, I guess, and a few others spearheaded a trip down to Marshall Space Center in Huntsville, Alabama. And it appears they kind of gave them free reign of the facility to recoat these mirrors themselves. So they kind of just talk about, you know, how amazing this was to have this big tank that can hold up to a 36-inch mirror and their vacuum and stuff. And pretty neat that we have that recording. And then here's the April version saying the painting got delayed. I guess they put the wrong kind of paint on there and had to restrip it all off and redo it. This is the only details we have of it, but you never know when you get into a project what happened, you know, what things that you kind of stumble upon, and during that, that's actually going to tie into what we've recently been doing here. But as of October '73, finally got the telescope painted, the mirrors got done, and, you know, Mr. Davis here, our editor at the time, personally, is very attractive and represents the most extensive renovation the telescope probably for the other telescope, you know, in the observatory's history. And, you know, looking back at that beautiful picture they just showed of that bright, beautifully painted orange telescope with shiny mirrors, would have been a sight to see. So here's the telescope now. So 52 years later, still a bright orange. It's got some wear and tear on it. I mean, it's got 50 years of dirt and grime and just other slight modifications. I guess they came in and repainted up here a little bit and, you know, added a few things here and there. But for the most part, this is what it's been for the last 50-some years. And look at that mirror. Pretty dirty. I got another picture I'll show in a minute that even shows it a little bit better. But for a while now, the thought has been, we really need to get this re-aluminized. The mirror just, it's dirty. The coating on there just being exposed to the elements, even in a dome, it's still, you open up the dome, it's exposed. It needs to get a nice new shiny coat from time to time. So jokingly, Amy and I were just like, you know, we started looking into places just for budgetary purposes. Hey, what's this going to cost to get this kind of done? And so we got some quotes, and we put a fundraiser together with the BAS going, hey, it'd be about $1,500 for the recoating itself, not including shipping and the packaging and so forth. It's actually a very reasonable amount. Several different companies that we reached out to, they all kind of pointed us to a company called Ostahowski in Anza, California. So the thought was, well, okay, well, there's no way we're just going to hand this historic almost 90-year-old mirror off to FedEx. So Amy's just like, well, why don't we drive it? Well, I guess so. Amy and I both are, we teach at UTC. We had this past summer off. We're like, you know, if we get the fundraiser for this, okay, why not? Let's make a trip out of it. So we put out the fundraiser. And although we haven't covered the entire cost of it yet, we voted as a BAS to go ahead and cover the $1,500 cost to do this, to commit to doing it. So the thought is, hey, we're removing these mirrors. This is a perfect time to give this telescope some love. So a little bit of cleanup. Why don't we think about repainting this a little bit? So we reached out all the membership, and then quite a few others at UTC to kind of talk about ideas and so forth, looking at other historical telescopes around the country, not necessarily at our small size, but when you compare it to some of the places I'm going to show here in a little bit, this is a little tiny guy. But in the end, we did a little AI comparison, a little chat GPT, and just threw in a bunch of different options and so forth. It's got some pretty funky little things that AI does for it. But in the grand scheme of things, it still gave us kind of an idea. We put in all sorts of different ideas and colors and so forth. UTC's colors are navy blue, and of course the gold, and also a light gray. And that navy blue and light gray really pop and make it so beautiful. And you can't really tell in the AI here, but a lot of this stuff, which originally unfortunately got painted over, and some of the other things do, are beautiful pieces of brass. And so imagine some of that shiny brass on here too. It's like, okay, I think this is going to be our goal. More on that later. So the decision was made. Amy and I decided to make a road trip out of this. Beforehand, just the purpose of this talk is about the trip, not the removal of the mirrors or the whole renovation itself. It's currently still not done. So we do have the mirrors out. We've started to do some things on the telescope and stuff. So I do want to show a few pictures of that. You at least have to. This is Ralph McConnell. So you basically lower the mirror cell out of the telescope itself and remove the mirror. Before we put it in a box, they asked us to kind of wash it off. So we rinse it off with some distilled water and so forth, make sure there's no big deep gouges or scratches or anything in it when we put it in a box. Still traveling across country with this thing, so it is packed nicely in high density foam, wrapped in tissue, white tissue paper. We asked Ostahowski what kind of requirements would be best for travel. They actually gave us the specification for shipping it, which of course we are not doing. Ralph built this great stretcher, so to take the mirror out and put it on there. If anybody has been up to that telescope room, it is it's a curved staircase that is quite skinny, and we needed to get it out and clean it up and pack it and box it. There was just really no way to efficiently do that up in the telescope room. So we put it on this stretcher and took it downstairs, cleaned it up, boxed it up, taped this thing, and was ready to go on its cross-country adventure. Here's the secondary as well. We put that in a little mini Pelican case. Just look at this, bird droppings. You can tell moisture's dripped in there and so forth. It's amazing we saw what we did. But it just kind of, so instead of, 99% reflectivity or whatever it was, down to 50. So what we've been seeing when we look at Jupiter or we look at the Orion Nebula or a star cluster, in which we still could through this, imagine what it'll be when all that gets removed and re-illuminized. Pretty amazing. So one thing I do want to point out here too, which is kind of interesting, this is just a unique view to be able to look up through the telescope when you don't have a mirror in it. This plate right here probably has never been removed. If so, it's we don't have any documentation on it. But this is a little plaque talking about the telescope and so forth. And when we removed this, I had everybody in the room when we were hanging out at the meeting, see if anybody could read this. But it's this tablet made by R. Bruce Jones, September 22nd, 38. So Bruce Jones made this plaque and signed it, essentially. And when that thing got mounted on there for a dedication to that telescope, that was just a really neat find. Okay, so here's the box. Big old mirror, nice and beautifully packaged, ready for its trip. And also here in this little Pelican case is the secondary. So packed and ready to go. Amy will jokingly say we decided to make this a 5-week trip. So you have to have an itinerary. Check. We did this living out of our camper. So really to go on such a long trip, and I guess I'll go into it a little bit when we get into it. When you drop off the mirrors, we have to wait a while for them to get done. And they promised to expedite them for us to help with our itinerary. But at a minimum, it would take them a week. So we took our camper. So check, and off we went. So here's kind of just in general our Google Maps built kind of map of what we did. But it was a whirlwind, to say the least. So that's what we'll talk about and mostly focus on here. So day one, we left on June 2nd, made our way up to Missouri up here, just barely across into the border at a nice little campground, but nothing really worth me going into too much. Now, Camp 2 was interesting. So we were just south of Wichita, Kansas on day 2. And boy, we saw some storms coming ahead of us. And somehow we were looking at maps and trying to see what the storms were doing. And of course, you know, our entire drive, the most important thing was the mirrors. Nothing else was important as the mirrors. So you know, we drove as cautious as we can, you know, and so forth, took our time. Well, we were able to navigate around this. And we just got a little bit of rain, but I guess Wichita got flooded, which is really unfortunate. It was really sad to kind of see how bad it got and stuff there, but fortunately for us, we were able to kind of navigate around it. So Camp 2 was it. So if you've never heard of anything, it's called Harvest Host, and you basically pay an annual fee, and there's thousands of places across the country, everything from farms to breweries to wineries to all sorts of other businesses that will let you stay there for free in a camper if they have the infrastructure. Usually you're boondocking it, which means they don't have water or electric or anything. You're kind of self-sustained. But like in our camper, we can easily do that. And so day 2 was at a winery called, I had to remember with his Wildwood Cellars. So they let us camp right there in their parking lot. We got to go in and have tastings, and once we finally made it there, we made it there at 4. They closed at 5, so we made it and got to do our tastings, and then we had camp. So we got to walk about 100 feet to our camper. It was quite convenient. So Camp 3 was in Raton Pass, New Mexico, and it was beautiful. It was quite an uphill drive once we got into New Mexico to get up here. It wasn't like back in the middle of the wilderness or anything. We weren't too far off an interstate or so forth, but it was just enough up and off in our view. It was gorgeous. Bad weather seemed to still come in through that way. We actually got hail. We're sitting in having dinner, and we're like, ding, bing, 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 and look outside, and just hail just started coming down. Luckily, they weren't big enough for damage or anything. They were smaller than a dime, but you know, pea size or so forth. It was still kind of interesting. I mean, this is June, and it ended up being, I think, in the upper 40s up there, maybe even lower than that, because of the high elevation we were at. Then we made our way to Albuquerque. Albuquerque has a natural history museum that neither one of us have been to. I went to graduate school in New Mexico State in Las Cruces, which is in southern New Mexico. Made a few times up to Albuquerque, but never made it to there. Amy went to school in Nevada, so she went to UNLV and did an internship with the U.S. Geological Survey in Albuquerque for a summer, and never that she remembered going there. So, and they have a planetarium, and we tell ourselves we're going to go see every planetarium that we can. And we love science and history as well. And come to find out, they even have a solar telescope. We missed looking through it by like 5 minutes. They shut everything down, which was kind of a bummer. But that was really kind of neat. That we got to check that out while we were there. And I jokingly, like, out of this entire trip, I think Albuquerque was the thing she was more excited about than anything else, because it's her favorite restaurant that she remembered ever going to. Like, when she had her stint there in Albuquerque, you know, with the USGS, she would go have a hard day of field work or whatever, and she would have Sadie's salsa and go to Sadie's all the time. it was just she had bad allergies, and boy, that the heat of everything just cleared her. But she finally got to take me there because I had never been there either, and it was fantastic. So so Albuquerque treated us nicely. So by day 5, we finally make it out to Flagstaff. And it was actually a nice campground. It was a KOA, and they gave us ended up getting a really nice spot in the pines. We got up we were there for 2 nights, so this is the first time we had a 2-night evening, and got up the next day and went for just a beautiful hike up the mountain. This picture doesn't necessarily do it a lot of justice, but it was gorgeous. And then later in that morning, we headed over to Lowell Observatory. So lo and behold, this trip wasn't just to go dump off mirrors and get them redone and bring them back. We wanted the whole experience. And unfortunately, this talk is about the trip itself. So I'm going to limit the discussions on all the observatories that we went to, but that was our goal, was to visit as many historic observatories, and we're also geologists, so we basically wanted to nerd out the entire time while we were there. And so Lowell was our first place, and Lowell was neat. They had redone so much stuff there. I can't even touch on it in this brief little part here. Maybe that could be an entire talk on its own. But so here's the 24-inch refractor that Lowell used, Percival Lowell, for his Mars observations. This is where he thought he saw canals, and spent a lot of time behind this telescope. It got cloudy that evening. Fortunately, it opened up enough. We did get to look through this that evening and we got to see the moon. It was a very brief, probably like 10 seconds of looking at it because the line was insanely long. Plus, they were fighting clouds, and we didn't want to hold people up. But it was kind of still neat to see and look through this old historic telescope. And if you don't recognize this one, this is Clyde Tomball's telescope that he discovered Pluto with. There were plates in the back, and just taking multiple plates over multiple evenings and then going to his blinking machine and seeing if anything moved. This is the telescope that Tomball discovered Pluto in 1930, which was really cool to go visit. So we were talking to the docents there, the guides, and we got to talking about why we're on a trip and so forth. And he pointed us to a board downstairs in the corner and goes, "Hey, here's kind of what the Tomball telescope looked like." And Amy and I are like, "Well, that color looks really familiar." And here's just a screenshot from a video that I found. Yes, that is a boxing glove. It is still on there today. I guess that's the way back in the day. So you make sure when this thing swung out, you're not hitting your head on it. But that color looks really familiar. It's not dead on. It's a little bit more reddish. But they just went through some major renovations, and that was part of it too. We were just talking about we're wanting to renovate the Jones telescope, and he just like, back in the day, this was very popular. I don't know the full story. It kind of started with with Kitts Peak somehow, and telescopes all over the country. It was just a thing. It was a fad. But he goes, that orange paint's, if you have that same color and around the, whatever the time frame, whenever they must have painted this one, it's like, that's got lead paint in it, right? Oh, 1970s. It should have been gone by then, or just be fading out. And so our lovely orange telescope, unfortunately, is lead paint. So, but this is what kind of started the thought of coming back and getting it tested. If we're going to be doing this, we need to do it right. We need to do it safely. And so that's going to be, it's not a big deal. It's just something you just have to make sure that you're aware of, so you take the precautions that need to be done and so forth with the painting and so forth. So but this was really interesting. It was like, huh, that's kind of an interesting color. So after we got done with the Lowell Observatory, we made our all the way to just outside of LA. So Banning, Stagecoach, another KOA was kind of our base camp. So we needed this. We arrived on a Sunday, and that Monday Ostahowski opened up, and our plan was to go drop the mirrors off that morning. So that evening we ended up there, and unfortunately we didn't take a lot of pictures here. It was a great base camp. We spent over a week there. It was perfect. Laundry facilities, mountain views. They had a pool, so it worked out really well, to say the least. So there's where Anza is. So Anza is a small little town in the middle of nowhere. Beautiful, beautiful area. Known for their wines, come to find out. Didn't know that. So the next morning on, I don't know what day it was, 8 or whatever, we got up that morning and drove all the way to Anza, California. I hear my cat in the background, so she's going to be in the video now. It's June, by the way. She's behind me under the door. That's what I get for doing this at home. So we got up that morning and just drove a beautiful drive up over the mountains and down over into Anza. So we drove in the Santa Rosa, the national monument here. I'm not sure. Can't remember if it was a state forest. Gorgeous drive though. And so we pull into this driveway. It's just him and his house. And he says, "Oh, you're fine. You can't miss us. We're in the back. We've got 2 shops in the back, and can't miss us." Okay, so we drive in. Beautiful area. They had a bunch of vines for grapevines in their whole front yard, and as we're driving in the back, and well, there you go, two big white buildings in the back, and we met Terry and his wife Frances, and we unloaded our mirrors. And I didn't mention this before, but one of our other members who had a 25-inch Dobsonian said, "Hey, since you're going out there, would you mind taking our mirrors with you? They need to be resurfaced." So Ned and Lynn, we were like, "Sure, we'll take them for you." So these are theirs. So we had a lot of precious cargo to make our way there. So we dropped these things off and just started talking with them, and they were just the nicest people. I can't say enough about them. They didn't mind telling us about their process. Terry took us on a tour throughout the whole facility, both buildings. His background, I guess, is optics, and he had been building lenses and mirrors for a really long time. He's a tinkerer, so he did a lot of this building his own equipment himself. So this big silver thing behind me is his vacuum chamber for large mirrors. And I can't remember his largest. It's somewhere above 30 inches. So maybe like 36 to 40 inches or something like that. So it's a pretty big chamber that he can work in. And so just to give you another, here it is where you can kind of see it. A lot of this he did. He built this himself. So I've got a video here in a little bit I'll show you. So of the process and so forth. He was very generous. He took some pictures and a few video, him and Frances, of our mirror being worked on, which was just so generous of them to do. This is a smaller vacuum chamber, so normally what he'll do is like, "Hey, well, let's say you got a Newtonian reflector. For us, we have a Cassegrain. You pay to get the big mirror done, and then they do the secondary free. So here's a smaller chamber to do smaller mirrors. I can't remember what the largest or that could fit in there, 10 or 12 inches, maybe. I can't remember. This is for the big mirrors. This is for the little ones. And then just his shop. I can't describe all of this because we didn't go into detail about everything, but he has an insane shop for grinding large mirrors, smaller mirrors, testing. I mean, it's pretty impressive. He's been doing this for a very long time. He really knows his stuff. And what's interesting too, it's at this point in time, it's just him and his wife mostly. You know, they got family, I guess, that will help out from time to time, or some neighbors if they really need some help. But you know, for the most part, it's just them anymore. Just look at all the pitch laps and grinding stuff that tools they got everywhere. Here's where they can, they're testing things. So if you've ever heard of the Obsessions telescopes, you know, he's doing a lot of the work on those mirrors and testing those and aluminizing those as well. Let's see, do I have another set? Yes, his machine shop. I mean, again, he's just one of those people that just is a tinkerer and builder. It's really impressive. I didn't take a picture of it too, but he's also got a sound studio. I guess kind of over COVID, he picked up a guitar and wanted to learn how to play the guitar, and is now playing with his family and like just having a ball with it. I can't remember what instrument Francis plays too. So they all play together and stuff. It's really kind of neat. So I put this in the end here instead of the beginning, but like I said, we were driving in and it's like, are we at the right place? We got to be. This is the address. You know, it looked like somebody's just residence. But then we pulled up to the back and it's Terry Ostahowski. So that says Terry Avenue. I was like, oh, okay. And then, oh, wait a second. There's a dome off the. Oh, yeah. Totally. We're in the right place. So we're good. So yeah, this is the main shop that we were in, and this is where he does his recoding and stuff. So dropped those things off, made a long trip, kind of a winding trip back home on a scenic route, got lunch in a small little town, and just went back to camp going, you know what, this is great. We got a couple days off. We need a break. So the next day we did laundry and just kind of chilled out, put some chairs outside until it got really hot. You know, when we were driving out here through this desert, I mean, it was in the 1 teens. I think the highest was 114, I think we saw. Hot. We finally got a day off. But then the next day, we can only sit around so much. We're traveling. You just got to do it, you know. We're near Joshua Tree. Now, both of us have been there before, but not together. And even though it was really, really hot, we got up really early that morning and got out there so we could do a little bit of hiking. So as long as you're out there and you're done by like 10 or 11 in the morning, where it's not 100 and some degrees, although we were out there till like 1 or 2, and you know, we were acclimated enough. We didn't do anything stupid. It was just, they were short trips and stuff. We got to explore Joshua Tree, which was a lot of fun to do this together. So you got 2 geologists that get to go run around in a park as beautiful as this, and with the geology and of course the deadly choyas. These things are called the teddy bear choyas, but you don't want to cuddle up with them. They are just nothing but spines, because everything in the desert really just wants to kill you. We had like 3 or 4 different hikes, and we just had a ball. It was fun. So once Joshua Tree got done, then we had, the way things worked out, 2 of the observatories that we wanted to see in the LA area only gave tours on the weekend. So I have a friend of mine I've known since high school that lives out there in LA, and so what's great is we got to meet him and his wife out at Griffith, and we even stayed the night down there. It was our anniversary, and so we got a hotel near Griffith Observatory. Met them, went out to dinner. It was awesome. Griffith was a cool place. You've probably seen this in a bajillion movies, and like James Dean had a famous movie was filmed there, and just so many. Come to find out, Bon Jovi did a video there, a music video back in the day. So Griffith Observatory's been been showcased a lot, but it is such a neat place. And what's cool, it's a park. It's a county park. It's free. So we went up. We did go. The big dome in the middle here is a planetarium, and then one of these was a solar scope, and the other one is this guy. This is funny too. That's a Celestron Schmidt-Cassegrain. I don't know what size that is because this is pretty big. That's probably a 9 1/4. It could be an 8, but it looks bigger than that. Even 11 inch. That's part of all this historic telescopes, which is really cool. The museums inside were really cool. There's the Leonard Nimoy Theater because he helped donate. He loved this place and donated money to have that built. There's a whole underground too. I don't have time to go into all of it, but it's a cool place to go visit. We really enjoyed Griffith. Views of the city. You can see the ocean off in the distance and whatever. It was cool. So when we got done with Griffith, we had to stay down. We stayed downtown because this is where Griffith is. Right here is our next spot, Mount Wilson. How do you not go see Mount Wilson, right? One of the most historic places as an observatory that there is. So we got up really early the next morning to get there when they opened, and it was a beautiful drive up there. Really lovely. We got so amazingly lucky on this trip with weather, and it was just gorgeous. And this is the off season too. So this was a Saturday, so we knew it was going to be kind of busy. We wanted to be the first people there. That's just how we roll. So we went on our docent took us on. It was at least 3 hours. I don't have Amy here to correct me. Trust me, she would correct me. She probably did during the original talk. But we spent at least 3 to 4 hours touring this place with the docent. We kind of walked around a little bit on our own first before the tour started because we got on the first tour. And there were probably 20 people in our tour, I think, something like that. Again, I can't go into it, but here's a solar observing tower that we got to go in and tour, which was really cool. They're still doing sketches of sunspots from this every day since they've been doing it since the beginning. This is a 60-inch telescope, so there is a 60-inch diameter telescope here, and this is the Hale telescope. Oh no, sorry, the Hooker telescope. This was a 100-inch diameter. This is the one that Hubble used, where he recognized the Cepheid variable for in Andromeda that basically said, hey, our galaxy is not alone. We have other galaxies. That thing is so far away that faint fuzzy, which used to be called the Andromeda Nebula until about 100 years ago, this is where we discovered other galaxies, confirmed that we had other galaxies. Everything has changed since that moment. It's so amazing. And to be able to go and see this historic telescope, this was just amazing. Unfortunately, they even had an observing program that night that we could have signed up and go to and stuff, and it was cloudy. It was really a bummer because I can't remember what the cost was. It was easily $100 and some, I don't know, a person. But you're there, and to be able to look through these telescopes would have been amazing. But it wasn't. It was beautiful all day, and it just got really cloudy tonight. It was a bummer. But I'm not dead. It was still just an amazing to go see these in the first place. For those that are familiar with the history of UTC astronomy, the Observatory, and the BAS, they might recognize this name as McAllister. And Hal actually just came out to our last meeting, so I got to talk to him after I gave this talk originally. But Hal McAllister was a UTC student who ended up working under Carel Huyer there, and just ended up having a wonderful career in astronomy. So he was the director of Mount Wilson from 2002 to 2014, and he helped instrumental with CHARA, which is At the time, I think the beginning was 6. I think when we were there, there was a 7th mobile 1-meter telescope that they were doing interferometry. Never can say that fast. With, they just got a grant. Actually, after this talk, I that for to add an additional mirror farther away to give them even higher resolution. It's really something. And again, I have to save that for another topic. Maybe we can get Hal to give a talk about this, and maybe he can give you a little bit more background about his history and stuff too someday. But this was a really neat place to go visit. We had a lot of fun. So Palomar has another tie to us, not as direct as far as having a member, an ex-member. I mean, Hal used to edit our newspaper or newsletters. Some of the first newsletter, maybe even the first newsletter. I think Hal, as a student, was the editor and so forth. But Palomar has another interesting tie to us, and I am gonna spend just a little bit, not as much as I could, because it's really fascinating. So Palomar back in the day, in the 30s, so Hale was involved with everything. He helped build the 40-inch refractor at Yerkes and the 100-inch at Mount Wilson. He was never satiated in his desire for bigger telescopes. He was always looking for the next big thing. And he just knew who the right people to talk to and could speak to them well enough to get money. And he talked Carnegie into a 200-inch mirror. And so through a lot of testing and so forth, they ended up going to Corning, New York, because they make Pyrex and it's low expansion glass. And they're like, no, we've never made anything that big before. We've done a little bit of testing with mirrors, but they agreed to pull off a 200-inch mirror. And this is a little 1/10 scale of it. This is the real scale. So when they test these big telescopes, they typically make some kind of a weighted blank to put in it to test the telescope itself. This is the size of the telescope, and there's Amy for scale. This right here is the telescope, and it is so big that you have to use a wide angle on your camera to capture it all, and it's really hard to judge what this thing is. But that 200-inch mirror is right down here. I mean, look at that forklift. That's people back here. This thing is monstrous. Started in the 30s, finally finished it in the 40s, and the whole escapade about the mirror itself and built and poured in Corning, New York, and making its trip to California. It's an amazing story. There's great videos on it, which I don't have time to get into. Here's kind of a sketch of this. So here's the mirror down here. It's a Cassegrain. It's just like ours. It's got this additional focus that they can do other things with. But for the most part, the light comes in off the big old mirror, bounces off a secondary, and comes back here to where you... this wasn't built for visual. So this was strictly, they're putting, back in the day, glass plates and so forth on this thing. We have quite a few of them, replicas or copies that were shipped to us from Palomar. At the observatory. So the glass plates that you see in the displays and stuff. Okay. So they did 2 pourings for this 200-inch mirror. The first one failed. You can kind of see it's kind of been cracked here. But they tried to make this rib design. And some of those, that first casting of it, the way they designed it, whatever, just didn't work. They still annealed it, which means cooled it off and so forth. But and then they set it outside. So it was the original mirror. So I think this one was poured in 34. Maybe the second was poured in 34. I got to remember because it took over a year to anneal, to cool off, from what I remember. But the first one didn't make it, and they just set it outside. The second pouring was successful, They did this rib design to make it much lighter. So this is the back of the mirror. Here's the front of the mirror. The blank before getting ground down. But what's interesting is this thing got set out back. They shipped the second one in the beginning of 1936 to California. So the Clarence T. Jones Observatory was officially funded through the Public Works Administration in 1936. Clarence and his sons promised to procure the necessary funding or building of the telescope itself, ordered the glass from Corning, and then they went up there in November to check on it. And so this is Clarence T. Jones and his son Bruce Jones standing on that 200-inch that's now in the Corning Museum, which is really cool. This is a QR code. If you want to scan that to the museum, you can peruse around. They have all sorts of records and really cool information about this whole 200-inch telescope and so forth. But this is really neat right here. What is also neat is, so this is at Griffith. This is not my picture. The one I have is worse, so I stole this one. I borrowed it from the internet. Somebody else that took it. But that's the plug. So when they made this, they also had a plug that fits in here that fills in the gap. So Cassegrain has a hole in it for the grinding process. And if I zoom in on this picture, so this was made in the mid-1930s, and it's kind of hard to see. It wasn't the best picture, but you can see little bubbles in here, and there's just kind of like some discoloration. And you know, back then, I mean, they literally are taking hot glass and taking ladles and dumping it and pouring it, and bubbles happen, and you know, you have these imperfections. As long as it's not enough on the surface where you're trying to coat it to get that reflection, you know. So what if the inside isn't perfect? This is what that glass looked like. I'm just going to kind of go through some news articles from back in the day, saying, "Hey, the telescope is now being assembled, and the glass has been made up at Corning Glassworks up in Corning, New York." And this is the same place that built the 200-inch. And then this, I'm not sure which newspaper this comes from. Unfortunately, this is not sourced, and I can't find it. I'm still looking. But a member of ours, Bobby Thompson, had this in his scrapbook. So fortunately, we have a copy of it. But Clarence basically says, we were there seeing about the 20.5-inch disc, because that's what so the Clarence T. Jones Observatory is a 20.5-inch, 20.5-inch Cassegrain mirror with a 5.5-inch secondary. But he goes, hey, we're up there to check on the disc, and we also wanted to get another 20-inch disc to make a test mirror for the secondary. And so not only did we have a disc, one 20-inch, but we went up and grabbed another one that I didn't even, through his historical records and so forth, didn't even know about this. That's kind of an interesting fact, because we don't have a lot of information about our mirrors. We know that they came from Corning, New York. We knew the timing that we got them. We even have some of our newsletters or our meeting minutes that say a few things. But some of these details we didn't really know about until we're starting to pull together this archive. I mean, there was this thing, oh, this was a test pour blank for the original 200-inch, which means this would have had been made before the 200-inch as a test pour at 20 inches. There's all sorts of rumors. We've just never had any real facts on it. So we're starting to finally get a little bit here. I'll get to more of that in a second. This is an interesting one where Clarence T. Jones in November, this is after they went up and visited it here. He says, hey, it's already just been cast by Corning, but it is necessary to anneal it again, which means it needs to be maybe cooled longer. Not sure what he means by again, before it can be used. So my guess is maybe they took it out and checked it when he was there and it wasn't ready, so they just kept annealing it. They basically keep it under it. They want it to cool really, really slowly. And so and he was just kind of hoping, hey, maybe it'll be shipped by December. I think it arrived in January. But this right here kind of talks about the two discs. So when we were at Palomar, interestingly enough, one of the docents there named Curtis, they were everywhere we went, everybody was so fantastic, and we didn't have a very big crowd that morning, so we probably didn't even have 10 people on our tour at Palomar. When we got to go in there, and we were talking to them and talking about our, situation. Come to find out, Curtis is Ostahowski's neighbor, so that was fun because we really got to talking with him. But he's like, he kind of gave some names of some people to kind of reach out to, and he's like, you should call Corning itself, and they also have the curators at the Corning Glass Museum. Maybe they might be able to help you out. So while on the trip, I reached out to both. Unfortunately, the Corning Glassworks themselves, their historical documents got destroyed in the 70s by Hurricane Irene, flooding in their basement. So they have none of their historic records of saying, hey, here's the receipt, purchase, and so forth. But the museum, on the other hand, goes, hey, George Macaulay has a bunch of papers. They're in boxes, they're not scanned, they're not, but they do know that they mentioned some other possible telescopes and for the mirrors in that time and for who they were. And he goes, listen, if you want to put in an official order, we'll see if we can get those scanned and to you. And I was like, I immediately did what I needed to do to put an official request to get those documents. So like they're really, there's way too many of us and too many to go through with the small staff we have. It's even going to take a while for us to get these scanned if it does get approval. It's also in cursive. None of us can read it. Fortunately, I've grew up with cursive, but I've also been reading a lot of BAS meeting minutes that have lots of cursive in them for several of the years, depending on the secretary we had. I'm pretty good at it, at least generally. So a couple months later, they got back with me. And they had uploaded they said, hey, we've uploaded these to our website. They're open to the public. So hopefully other people interested in his notes. So George Macaulay was the engineer over the making of the 200-inch mirror. And so in September of 36, this is when we ordered our mirrors. To date, 5 1/10 scale models of 200-inch have been made and distributed as follows. One to Caltech, one to the Franklin Institute, another one to Rochester Electric Show. I had to look that one up. That says one in stock and one still annealed. So there is 5 of them around the time we ordered. One's being annealed, one in stock. And there's 4 or 5 different notes that mention this. And here's another one that says 5 20-inch models record, one to Caltech, one to Franklin Institute, one to Rochester, one in stock, and 1 or 2 around lacking annealing. So there were 5 20 inches right at the time that we ordered ours. So considering that Jones and his son went up there in December or in November of just a couple months after this to go check on the mirrors, and one of them is still being annealing, this is the closest thing that we have to a documentation of where our mirrors came from, which is really cool. And so when you look at our glass, so these are pictures Terry and his wife Francis took while there. This is them stripping. So what they do is they remove the old coating completely, clean it all the way down to the original glass. Look at that. You can see the bubbles in here. This is 102.15 pounds. That is the weight. He weighed this mirror, this piece of glass. So this is the raw glass. Actually, I think this is the backside of the glass. So a lot more bubbles and stuff in the back, because he was saying, ooh, that's why they did the front. The back had a lot more bubbles. But here's the cleaned off version. And he took a couple of videos. Does that look kind of like that plug at Griffith? Look at those bubbles. And this one's a really, really short one. The next video is even a little bit better, but all the imperfections and stuff here, it is basically just poured right after the Griffith one. And so this one, he turned off all the lights and just took a flashlight and put the flashlight in and showed it into that glass. This is just so cool and so nice of them to do that. I mean, think about this. This thing is almost 90 years old, this glass, and how they made it. It's not, it is 4 inches thick and 102 pounds of solid Pyrex glass. It is amazing. So this was really cool. Because this isn't like this anymore. He has gone in and finished it. So he's also got a video here of him putting it into the machine. So this is his vacuum chamber. So there's the blank. He had to make all sorts of special stuff for this because this is not how glass is today. It is much thinner, lighter weight, and just easier to work with. But this is kind of a neat thing of process. Maybe someday we could get him to give a talk about this process. He'd do a lot more justice than I am for it. But essentially, once they feed it into this machine, they vaporize the smallest, the tiniest amount of aluminum and all sorts of other coatings and stuff too. His website goes into it really well. But this is looking in the little tiny window of his vacuum. And I guess that's the hot heated rod. And they basically, I mean, it is just the tiniest amount. It just poof, vaporizes and almost instantly coats this mirror or this glass with the aluminum. That's pretty neat. So there's the two mirrors when they're done. Nice and shiny and pretty. I don't see any of those bird droppings, other things on there. So basically we picked up the boxes a week later. They're still in the boxes, by the way, until we get the telescope painted. We're hoping to get that done the next month or so. One last fact that I just want to make sure that I let everybody know about is once we got done, they're in the boxes and we're talking to Terry and Francis and, just last, just bits of conversation. Curtis, our docent, was there. He came over that morning. We met him at Palomar the night before, and we were just chatting, and it's like, okay, well, they gave us a quote on things would be taken care of, for a certain amount. We did a BAS fundraiser and everything for it. And Terry and Francis just looked at us and basically said, listen, we've been talking, and we would like to donate all of our efforts and material, everything to this. And they didn't charge us. He even said beforehand, he was like, man, this was the hardest project we've worked on all year. And Amy and I were going, oh, man, what? But they just, from the beginning, we kind of just, shared videos and shared pictures of the place and our website and just, Palomar's down the street and like the history of the mirrors and stuff. And like, they really they fell a part of it. And it was just, they decided to donate their efforts to it. So on top of a lot of other things going on at the observatory and the telescope and so forth, this is just one other part of it that just people feel really a part of it. And they're just amazing, amazing people. But this is Terry and Francis and Penny. Penny was just such a fun dog. Did not like men. Loved Amy. She's friendly as can be, but like if I went over to her, she'd growl at me. And then she would come up to me acting like she would want loving and rub up against me, and then I'd go down to pet her and she'd growl at me. So I didn't take it personally. They said she doesn't like any males. But anyways, Penny was a great dog. So we kept trying to get Penny in the picture, and we finally got a picture of us and so forth. So we finally get done. We get back to Anza. we are on our stretch home. So we head over to Camp 7, which we made our way down to Tucson, Arizona. Because outside of Tucson, Arizona is another observatory. This is our camp. This is our favorite camp. So that's Tucson in the background. Unfortunately, due south of us, so it washed out the Milky Way a little bit. I tried to get a little bit of a picture of it. We're right outside Saguaro National Park. It is beautiful. We were like 3 campers in the entire place. They have like over 100 campsites. But it was our favorite camp. It was great because it was the off season. Who camps when it's 100 and some degrees out? I guess we do. So then we made our way to Kitts Peak. So many other historic telescopes there. A lot of these still being used for science. Like even Palomar is still being used for science. But this is DESI that's attached to here. We actually watched a full-down planetarium show on that a few months ago, which was really kind of neat to kind of see the entire thing. I'm pretty sure, now I got to remind myself that this is the telescope that Vera Rubin worked with. Might have been this one, I can't remember. But she worked at Kitts Peak and did a lot of her science and studies and so forth here. They took us up to this spot here, which is, there's telescopes and domes everywhere. And we were only 3 people on that tour that day. We had one other lady with us, and we basically had 2 docents that split the day up, and we did like 4 hours there. And they took us around everywhere. We learned so many stories, and we got taken kind of around areas they normally don't take people because of, it was just us, and it was such an amazing day. Then we went back to camp. We stayed at that one down in Tucson twice. And then the next day we got up and made all the way over to the Very Large Array, which are these guys. So when we were at the meeting the other day, when I was actually given this, of course I'm sitting there, hey, anybody recognize those? This was big on our list. I mean, they were all big on our list, so it's kind of hard to think. But like, who doesn't recognize those from Contact? So that's where Jodie Foster worked when she, they got the radio signals from another speed, from aliens and so forth and so forth. We actually were there in time. We got to watch them move a little bit, and it was right at the end of the day, and so that we were the only ones there, and it was really, really cool. And then we stayed at another Harvest Host right outside there, and it's this diner right outside of Magdalena, and it was awesome. And both Amy and I love the Southwest. I love the food of the Southwest. I love anything green chilies. I think we ate green chilies just about on every meal because you have to. New Mexico is just famous for the green chilies, but I had a phenomenal green chili cheeseburger here. We camped right out back here. We had such a beautiful view. This diner was just neat. It was, just locally owned, husband and wife. There were fires off of the mountains, which is part of the story here in a second. They were coming through and they were feeding them, and the building's got Looney Tunes painted all around it and stuff. It was a really cool place. So the goal was to go to the Gila Wilderness, which is kind of over in here, but unfortunately there were major forest fires. So we were supposed to stay there for a couple of days. There were cliff dwellings in there, and it was a stomping ground when I was in college. And we didn't end up getting to go, but we ended up improvising and staying in a different camp along this lake for an evening instead, which was just awesome. And then this is Las Cruces. So that's the Oregon Mountains. This is where I went to grad school. So this was my stomping grounds there, which was really cool. When we got done here, we were supposed to go down to White Sands National Park and then go camp up in the mountains. But they ended up getting there was a fire up there actually, but it was really, they had massive storms coming in, and they were monsoon flooding predicted and so forth. So they were basically warning people not to go up there and stuff. So we ended up cutting our trip a couple days short for that. you know, luckily the rest of the trip was perfect. This was just the end that we kind of got a little bit of detoured, but it was okay. We ended up missing going to a winery in Texas, but another harvest host. We ended up staying at another at Abilene, Texas, at a KOA. We stopped off for a week and got to hang out with Amy's parents, so that was built into the trip, which worked out really well. And I bring anytime I go there. This time I didn't. I just brought a camera on this trip. Just way too much stuff. So I was basically focused on Milky Way pictures and so forth. So this is their front yard. It's probably a good solid border 4. It's beautiful there. So I do astrophotography every time I go there. We just had enough rain one day. Just a beautiful rainbow. Thought I would throw that in there. And then Camp 12 was outside of Memphis. Nothing exciting there. It was just another KOA. It was nice, but nothing to write home about. Finally home. What a whirlwind. Woohoo! Made it. So the mirrors are nice, tucked safely away in the observatory. We've still been doing some small things, but we're really waiting on trying to get the painting done. But in the grand scheme of things, what turned out to be like, ha ha ha, we'll just go ahead and throw these in the back of our car, we'll just take them out there, we really did it. It took us 5 weeks, 6,000 miles, 12 campgrounds, 6 historic observatories, 2 beautifully recoated historical mirrors, but we also brought Ned and Lynn's back too. So four mirrors altogether. In the end, it was such an amazing trip, and I could talk for hours and hours and hours about all these different observatories. Maybe that's why this is part 1, and maybe part 2 we'll go into details someday. I'll give another talk for Ralph and stuff. But it was just a neat trip. It was worth sharing. There's a lot of neat historical ties to the BAS and the observatory in this, so that was kind of another reason to try to put this together, and why I wanted to retape it. To have that and to be able to share that with those that weren't able to make it that day. So hopefully the taping here wasn't so bad. It was, again, we had all the banter, and it's fun when you give a talk and you're amongst the members and, just chatting and stuff. We had a good time, the heckling from Amy, and if I didn't do a good job and stuff. I'm kidding. She chimed in when a little bit more that, she probably would have caught some things that I missed out here today, but anyways. So it was an amazing trip. We were really excited about it. We're really excited about the renovations that are being done at the observatory and with the telescope. In the grand scheme of things, it's been 50 years, but when it's all said and done, this thing is going to be refurbished and ready for another 50. So it is really cool. So thank you much. I guess I can't take questions, but I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see everybody soon. All right. Take care.